After World War I, foreign interests grew within the Middle East due to its abundance in oil. Countries like the USSR, USA, and Britain began interfering with Iranian politics. Britain helped put into power Reza Khan as the Shah, or monarch, of Iran in 1935. The goal of this new monarchy was to modernize and westernize Iran. During World War II, Mohammad Reza Shah took his father's place as the monarch. Under Mohammad Reza Shah, Mohammad Mossadegh was appointed as the Prime Minister of Iran in 1951. The new Prime Minister was a member of the Tudeh Party, otherwise known as the Communist Party of Iran. The new Prime Minister threatened the Shah's democratic ideals. Iran began suffering from the boycotts on its oil from major world powers such as the USSR, the USA, and Britain. These led to hard economic times for Iran and led the parliament to nationalize Iranian oil. To secure its place globally, Iran began importing American weaponry to defend itself. Mossadegh and his Communist Party's beliefs led to major unrest with both foreign countries and from Muslims who feared losing the right to their religion. Mossadegh planned to overthrow Iran's government. In 1953, Britain and the United States attempted to overthrow Mossadegh via a military coup known as Operation Ajax. Mossadegh fled the country after demonstrations from Shia Muslims. In 1963, the Shah began what was known as the White Revolution, a revolution that was designed by America and was meant to improve and modernize Iran. The White Revolution grew the Iranian economy exponentially. However, class division and problems economically for the lower class grew as well. Religious leaders became critical of the White Revolution, as it poorly distributed Iran's land, gave women rights, and allowed for more immigrants and thus more foreign influence within the country. The most important of these religious leaders was the Ayatollah Khomeini. The Ayatollah Khomeini criticized Reza Shah for his neglect of the poor, sale of oil to Israel. He also felt that Iran having a king was corrupt and that it went against Shia Islam. Iranians began to criticize their government. Many felt that America had been playing too big of a role in Iran, and that the Shah was challenging Muslim beliefs. In 1975, the Shah eliminated Iran's two-party system for a one-party system in an attempt to limit political opposition. The Shah became an autocrat and put into place a ruthless secret police known as the Savak, who were trained in America and specialized in taking down political opposition. Throughout the 70s, protests and demonstrations grew both by the words of the Ayatollah Khomeini and the Shah's ignorance. The Shah fought these protests with violence, which had the effect of only growing the protests larger. In January of 1979, the Shah was exiled to Egypt and Khomeini was put into power, making religion vital to Iranian government. In his exile, the Shah developed cancer, and on October 22, 1979, the United States brought him into the country for medical attention. Iranians felt that this move was done by America to put the Shah back in power in Iran. On November 4th, just 13 days later, the American embassy was sieged by Iranian students from the University of Tehran. On the same day, the Ayatollah Khomeini had planned protests against the U.S. The protests were in hopes to promote Islamic government and himself as a leader. 66 people were working at the embassy that day. In the following days, America and diplomats from other countries attempted and failed to free hostages through diplomacy. Khomeini created great anti-American sentiment, which led to the failure of these diplomatic tries. On November 12th, Aboli Hassan Bani Saad, the foreign minister of Iran, released a statement saying that the hostages would be freed only if America withheld from interfering in Iranian affairs, that the Shah be returned to Iran, with having obvious consequences, otherwise known as assassination, and that the Iranian assets held by America be returned to Iran. On November 17th, African Americans and women were released from the embassy because of Iran's sympathy to minorities and oppressed groups. However, they kept 52 hostages at the embassy for the full 444 days. In April of 1980, the U.S. began designing a military operation to extract the hostages from Tehran. On April 24, 1980, Operation Eagle Claw was created. The U.S.'s plan was to deploy 8 helicopters and several special operations soldiers in the desert southeast of Tehran. The first team was tasked with liberating the embassy and retrieving all of the hostages. The second group was in charge of transporting these hostages to a nearby airstrip. 2 of the 8 helicopters failed before reaching the first destination. Then another one broke down after reaching this destination. The remaining helicopters tried to withdraw after this. However, one of these helicopters ended up colliding with a support craft. In total, 8 servicemen were killed. Their bodies were paraded in the streets of Iran and were put all over Iranian news stations. The hostages from then on were split up and housed in secret locations for the remainder of their captivity.
After 30 days of unsuccessfully trying to get the American hostages out of Tehran, the government of the United States is now trying to get the deposed Shah of Iran out of this country. And there is no sign tonight that either problem is likely to be solved soon.
News ratings skyrocketed during the crisis, and America's lack of knowledge regarding international affairs was used to the media's advantage. The news tried hard to create a connection between everyday American citizens and the hostages held in Iran. Americans were disgusted by the lack of progress made towards saving the hostages and thus criticized the Carter administration. The Carter administration failed to defuse the situation, which ultimately led to its downfall. During this time, anti-Iranian sentiment flourished throughout America. At a federal level, all Iranian visas were deemed invalid and diplomatic ties were cut from Iran. Universities across the U.S. became hostile towards Iranian students, shouting chants like "Nuke Iran" and "Maim Iranians." The hostage crisis did, however, provide America with the opportunity to come together, something it desperately needed after scandals like that of Watergate. Life was very brutal for the hostages. One hostage stated, "Sometimes I thought I'd never see the sunrise again. When I wasn't bored to death, I was scared stiff." If senators spoke out about things that contrasted the Ayatollah Khomeini's views, the captives would be punished. Hostages faced beatings, solitary confinement, and even being forced to play Russian roulette. William Gallegos was beaten for 2 days straight and then forced to make statements on TV criticizing U.S. policy. Food for hostages was also very scarce, and was often tampered with. The hostage takers also played mind games with their hostages. One night, at 1 a.m, a group of masked Iranian guards dragged a group of hostages and forced them to stand up against a wall. Behind them, the hostages could hear bullets being loaded and chambered into guns. Many of the hostages believed that they were about to die, and one of the hostages attempted to give himself his final rites. The guards even shot off their weapons to act like they were going to shoot the hostages. In the end, nobody was shot. Instead, the guards laughed at the reactions of the hostages and forced them to strip down to their underwear as they searched their cells. As the Iranian hostage crisis continued, Iran began seeing pressure from surrounding countries that would eventually require the conflict to stop. These pressures included the USSR's invasion of neighboring Afghanistan and the start of the Iran-Iraq War. The hostages were eventually released on January 20, 1981, 444 days after being captured. They were released shortly after Ronald Reagan's inauguration speech. The Iranian hostage crisis not only destroyed Jimmy Carter's administration, but also allowed for the creation of a religious theocracy ran by the Ayatollah Khomeini. To this day, America and Iran continue to have poor diplomatic ties, and many still look to this event as the reason why.